fairly similar to the Australian open reel system. Lastly, Commodore 64 users could download their computer data, including video games, onto audio cassettes. This was done with the help of the dataset peripheral. The dataset would capture data as audio, which you could feed back into the computer to retrieve your files. If you play it as standard audio, it sounds a bit like an old dial-up modem. Thank you for joining us for today's Things You Can Do with Magnetic Tape.
Yeah, I'll do it later. I should tell him. Okay, hey guys, guess what? Hi guys, Tyler here. I was thinking about doing something, and I'll be doing it later on today, guys. Yesterday, someone told me to do Cuphead, and I was thinking, the Cuphead. How about we do something else too? What it is, I'm not going to say.
All-time least shocking turn of events, that propaganda machine known as the Nazi Party.
I'm still playing a game that I haven't played in a while, and they're going to say, Tyler, you didn't play the game at all, period. I played the game, but this time I'm not going to give up. I mean, give it a Cuphead a few times. But this next thing I'm going to do is, I always give up on Chapter 4. What it is, I'm not going to say what it is, but this time I'm not going to give up on it. I keep these. But what it's going to be, I'm not going to say. Besides, that's not for a future episode. What I'm going to do is something that I haven't did in a while. Yes, I am doing it later on today, guys. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's a game. And I'm kind of going to do it because I kind of really want to do it. You have a chance to win a Nintendo Switch back in, Dill offered, expired already. But yeah, guys.
Which was put into storage after airing, remains the most plentiful source of 1930s television. Now, it was hard to decide whether or not I actually wanted to use some of this footage. I really don't like giving a platform to what is by and large Nazi propaganda. But I also believe in history and learning from the successes and especially the failures of the past. So, here are a few brief, unaccompanied excerpts from the Paul Nitko television station.
Freue mich eigentlich, dass es heute alles so wunderbar geht, nicht wahr? Denn es auch hier und da immer noch so etliche Schwerpfeifer bei uns gibt. Und vielleicht auch mal solche, die gerne mal wieder die Hemdrummel rühren möchten. Sogenannte Bewiesmusikanten, nicht wahr? Da machen wir Seelenstädterleben. Die kommen sie auch.
Unbeatable prices on the season's best flavors.
Dumont. Dumont. Which didn't last. Which Dumont did live.
And welcome to the Oddity Archive, the show that isn't afraid to stretch its own name and concept to its absolute limits. And with that in mind, today's topic is really only an oddity by default. Today, I want to talk about America's first attempt at a fourth major network, Dumont. Not to be confused with DuPont, the chemical company. You know. Anyway, in my personal experience, I find a lot of early TV to be mostly an academic experience in watching it. I mean, a lot of it's really dry, and I think you kind of had to be there at the time to really truly appreciate it. So, with that in mind, a lot of Dumont's output is lost, unfortunately, and what I've been able to get my hands on has made for a pretty tedious research experience on my part. But what I've tried to do here is put together the best, and of course, this being the archive, the weirdest moments from their run. But before we get to any of that, I suppose we kind of have to do our requisite history lesson first, don't we?
There's a pleasure for moments of pleasure with Dumont. Life has more to it, you thrill when you view it through Dumont.
The history of the Dumont network is a pretty complicated one. Here's my attempt at boiling it down to just the most important stuff. Inventor Alan V. Dumont launched Dumont Laboratories in 1931 as a means of creating and marketing new technology. Most notably, Dumont Labs developed radar and the cathode ray tube, the old TV tubes. In 1938, Dumont started manufacturing their own line of TVs featuring the cathode ray tube, or CRT, technology. Shortly thereafter, Dumont launched an experimental TV station, namely W2XVT, based out of Passaic, New Jersey. W2XVT was later moved to New York City and, after another call sign change, was rechristened WABD in 1944, becoming Dumont's first owned and operated station. Dumont's regular network service began on August 15, 1946, a little over 5 years after NBC and CBS's first commercial broadcasts. Of course, Dumont's plan was to expand into a TV network and compete with NBC and CBS. However, the U.S.'s involvement in World War II brought TV to a halt, both in broadcasting and licensing, opening up most of the TV frequencies to military use. After the war, the FCC resumed taking submissions for TV licenses, and, perhaps unsurprisingly, the response was overwhelming, leading to overcrowded airwaves. This led to a freeze on granting new licenses from 1948 to 1952, while they devised a means of sorting out a proper set of regulations in TV broadcasting, which was only on the VHF band for Channel 13 at the time. Once the freeze ended, the FCC opened up the UHF band for broadcast, and while this was a theoretical fix for the US, the overriding problem was that most TVs, large included, were only capable of receiving VHF stations at the time. UHF was generally only received via a separate adapter in those days.
I have a TV.
This capability didn't become standard on most TVs until the mid-60s.
Mm-hmm.
Another major problem facing Dumont was that they didn't have the resources of the established networks, forcing them to produce their shows on much lower budgets with much fewer celebrities. And folks in the late 40s, early 50s weren't exactly enthusiastic about dropping at least $300 on a TV, only to see a bunch of people they'd never heard of. Dumont only managed to scrape together 3 owned and operated stations and 17 primary affiliations in its lifetime. Another 222 stations carried cherry-picked Dumont programming, but usually only sporting events, leaving most of Dumont's original programming in the dust.
Posted on the packages that we sent to the Earthline missions in Alaska, China, and Montana.
On September 23, 1955, Dumont carried its final original program, a game show called What's the Story? To fulfill their existing sports contracts, Dumont only carried sporting events after that. On August 5, 1956, 9 days short of what would have been their 10th anniversary, Dumont ran its final broadcast, a boxing match. By the early 70s, Dumont's archive had fallen into the hands of ABC, and according to actress Edie Adams, sometime in the early 70s, when trying to buy out the rights to Ernie Kovacs, her late husband's Dumont output, Adams found out about the whereabouts of the Dumont archive. However, ABC, not wanting to put up with the costs of storage and copyright renewals, had already dumped the archive into the upper New York Bay. Most surviving Dumont shows only exist because they were captured via kinescope for rebroadcast, and the receiving stations never threw out the film. As such, shows like the apparent first TV sitcom Mary Jane and Johnny, and the mystery series The Gallery of Madame Lu Song, featuring silent film star Anna May Wong, are all completely lost.
If I could, if I go back to the 50s right now and Dumont was around or something, yeah, tape all of it, I'd give Ben all the footage.
I'm just explaining a simple fact to Bauer, Mr. Delmar.
What simple fact?
Mirrors in direct view electronic cathode ray tubes, such as you find in our Dumont set, it is possible to increase dimension without image disintegration or loss of definition.
Well, it may be a fact, but it ain't simple.
What do you mean, Professor, is that Dumont television sets are hot stuff?
He did?
Certainly. After all, Dumont pioneered the big direct view tubes right from the start. Dumont makes the kind of big tubes that mean not just bigger pictures, but also brighter, sharper pictures. You see what I mean? Hot stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course, Mr. Delmar. After all, Dumont pioneered these direct view tubes, you know. See what I mean, Professor?
Oh, God. Yes, yes.
Even today, only Dumont makes the giant 20-inch tube. 213 square inches of pictures. That's 4 times as large as the picture you get on most of today's television sets. Yeah, you understand? You know, that's what you have a little brain to understand.
Yes.
And you do have a little brain, don't you,
Oh,
Professor?
well, certainly, Bowers. No, I...
Mr. Delmar, even today, Dumont television receivers all have FM radio as well as television. And that's another sign of Dumont quality.
Well, that certainly is very sensational. I would make some remark now. I think the best thing we should do is to get back to class. Yes, so go back to your seats, boys. Now, boys and girls.
Now, theoretically, this would be the sort of episode where I'd be riffing at least some of the material, but I'm not going to. Just for that, I am making the next episode of VHS Vault. And I am putting some of today's material in the archive riffs pile. You're a bastard! Don't make it worse. Anyway, as I was about to say, there's just too much material here to get into the plans too. So, with that in mind, let's just get going here. First up, let's take a look at some of the dramas that appeared on the Dumont network. And to me, this is pretty much symptomatic of everything about early TV. Almost all of it is live, and as such, you've got awkward delivery and flubbed lines and missed all over the place. And this being Dumont, they didn't have a lot of money, so they had to rely on somebody playing an electric organ just off camera all the time to get these really cheesy soundtracks to boot. And on top of that, it's early TV, and they had to get a lot of new material out the door constantly, and as such, you get some pretty half-baked scripts. But anyway, as I've very majorly implied here, I had a tough time getting into this stuff, and with one notable exception, I just couldn't muster any real interest in the characters or situations or anything. And I think you'll see why.
Back when I was a kid in high school, I worked all one summer for a traveling carnival. It was an experience I never forgot. I suppose that's what must have prompted me one day not long ago to stop at one. I was driving back to the city in my Kaiser after having spent a rather dull weekend in the country. And I happened to notice this particular show. See, Mademoiselle Louise! See, the Queen of Princegore! See, her special temple dance! The secret dance! Performed only in the Forbidden City! Every movement of the little lady has a meaning of its own! Mademoiselle Louise goes on and shows on! Learn the secret that drove King Avenue mad! Let's let us focus.
love the Great Lakes. The Great Lakes Tunnel moves line 5 out of the water deep under the lake bed. The chance of a leak into the
Is perfectly happens. Go back there.
The Department of Navy in Washington, D.C. has issued a civil emergency alert for the
What we're doing today, I can't eat that. What we're doing, I can't do it. It's a choking hazard.
All normal broadcasting has been discontinued. This station will now begin airing news and official information. Please stand by.
Please stand by me. It's a little crap of you guys. Wonder what that means. Two pieces of jawbreak there. I don't want to lose them. I got you a couple things quick. Eject this. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. And they're gonna be. I'll be back in a minute.